The Massachusetts Special Commission on Combating Antisemitism produced a statewide roadmap for helping cities and towns recognize, prevent, and respond to antisemitism. In this video, we're going to focus on several of the Commission's clearest recommendations for municipal leaders, public employees, and local law enforcement. Elected officials and municipal staff will be able to assess whether their community has the relationships, public safety practices, and communication systems it needs. Additionally, residents, grassroots groups, faith leaders, and local Jewish institutions will learn what the report gives them the basis to ask for and what local government and law enforcement are responsible for implementing. Cities and towns do not need to create an entirely new system or do this work alone. CJP's Center for Combating Antisemitism, JCRC, and our partners can help municipalities identify priorities, strengthen local relationships, and begin implementation. If you don't know where to begin, please reach out to us. So, Jeremy, what does the Commission's final report say a prepared municipality should have in place, and how can a town realistically get started?
Why don't we start with talking about public leadership at the municipal level and what residents should expect from their elected officials when anti-Semitism occurs. And first and foremost, the Commission outlines good practices in communication when an incident occurs. And that's a very important part of what municipal leadership needs to do. Good communication starts with calling out and naming anti-Semitism clearly and specifically in the same way that one would expect to call out and name any form of hate incident for what it is. It's important to do that whether or not the events also involve a law enforcement investigation, because hate can be legal and protected, but also something that should not be tolerated.
Yeah.
And it is important when making a statement to name that distinction if necessary. It is important for municipal officials in the moment when an incident has happened to be very clear about naming that it is anti-Semitism and to be crass about it, not to go to a place of hate generically is bad without first naming the specificity of the anti-Semitism. And I say that in the same way that one would expect one's leaders in an incident that is, say, homophobic or racist or of any kind of bias, to be specific in naming that. And it is certainly appropriate, having done so, to then address the larger context of rising hate and bias after naming explicitly and directly the particular form. Communication is also an opportunity for education to explain to the community. And I think municipal officials know that communities often engage in a lot of online gossip, for example. So communication to be descriptive about what happened so that people know the facts, and also educational. Why is this incident a form of hate? What element of, say, anti-Semitic tropes is coming into play in this moment that merits addressing? And it's important in naming and calling it out to reinforce community standards. We will not tolerate this here. There ought to be no place for this kind of hate in our community. And also to recognize the harm that it is putting on residents or institutions in their community. So to be very specific about, we stand with our Jewish residents, or we stand with this institution, to know that they are a part of our community, they are valued, we recognize that they are going through something difficult. So all of those elements just go into good incident response messaging that also demonstrates good leadership that meets the needs of your residents. Yeah. And we encourage all that and outline that in the documents and materials online. That kind of communication prevents misinformation, it addresses isolation, and it stands up against the normalization of hateful conduct.
And moving to relationships, JCRC has long understood the impact of relationships. So what does the report say about building relationships before an incident, and why is that important?
The Commission talks about, as do we in our work at CJP and JCRC, the notion of resilient communities. And resilient communities start with having the civic fabric before something happens. And that's probably obvious to municipal officials who engage in resiliency practices and training around, say, disaster response, accidents, crisis, frankly, severe weather. The same baseline of building resilient communities is a part of addressing hate, including anti-Semitism. So what should municipalities be doing? First of all, focusing on relationships before crisis. As a municipal leader, is your municipality in relationship with the local Jewish institutions, faith leaders across institutions, cultural organizations, other potential targets of hate or discrimination, as well as with broader local civic groups, your chambers of commerce, your business leaders roundtable, whatever that is, that represents the civic fabric so that you have the resiliency of those relationships. That provides trusted points of contact. That is the way you strengthen those cross-communal understanding interfaith relationships, and you build civic cohesion before there's an incident. It's also a part of the work of making sure that residents and community groups can help to build those partnerships. It's not entirely on municipal leaders to own all of that, but there is the element of weaving those networks of relationships. And finally, there's a role for municipal leaders to play specifically in that regard to do convenings, bring people together, coordinate, sustain them, encourage people to be engaging and networking and connecting across communities as leaders in your municipality so that, again, you are building, as a municipal leader, the resilient community that you need in a time of crisis.
What about law enforcement? What should local residents, community members, and institutions expect from law enforcement in their community?
The law enforcement aspect of this is, of course, a very important part of the Commission's report. Obviously, a lot of the ways in which anti-Semitism and all forms of hate are experienced is through criminal activity. And while much of the recommendations have to do with, say, the roles of prosecutors, of statewide institutions like the Executive Office of Public Safety, there is a specific role for the municipal level. And that first and foremost starts with training. Your public safety officers should receive training on anti-Semitism, on hate crimes, and on trauma-informed responses to violence. They should be equipped to recognize bias and its motivations, to distinguish what is a harmful incident from a prosecutable crime. They should be able to support the affected residents. Doesn't necessarily mean the direct work that they do, but also in connecting those residents to other resources. And that is a part of municipality. We don't expect every municipality to have every resource, but to know how to avail itself of necessary resources and to be able to classify incidents accurately. Importantly, reporting. It cannot be emphasized enough that reporting hate crimes consistently through the appropriate state and federal vehicles is a critical part of combating anti-Semitism and all forms of hate. If we don't have clear data on what is happening, where it's happening, and what the patterns are, it makes it much harder to deal with it as a societal challenge. And we have to make sure that it doesn't get misclassified so that, if something is an anti-Semitic incident or a homophobic incident or another form of bias or hate, it needs to be classified that way so that, again, we understand what is going on and that law enforcement at all levels can address things with data. Residents need to know how and where to report. It's important that we do this on our website. We always how to report an incident. We encourage local municipal officials where to report an incident. Put it on your website and make sure it's out there. People should not have to wonder in a crisis. And then finally, law enforcement needs their own training on the classification and reporting systems so that they're not wondering in a moment.
So moving to security, what role does a local municipality, a town, play in protecting synagogues and community centers, vulnerable institutions?
And again, there's a theme throughout this, which is preparedness and leadership. And here again, there's preparedness. A municipality, whether that is the civic government or the law enforcement, can readily and easily identify where are the vulnerable institutions in their community, whether those are synagogues or JCCs, other kinds of community centers, not just for the Jewish community, for others, to know what are the vulnerable institutions and, importantly, where are the clear points of contact. If something happens in X institution, know who's going to be talking with them from the local law enforcement or from the local municipal leadership.
Mm-hmm.
The city manager should know who is the point person at a JCC if something happens. They should be able to participate together with those institutions in preparedness and security planning. And I know that at CJP, there are certain resources and professionals who specifically do security planning for institutions and security training for law enforcement. That kind of planning and preparedness can happen in partnership so that everybody understands who to call, like what is that first text phone call in the moment. And they should be able to coordinate effectively when threats, vandalism, harassment, or emergencies occur. And we're not just talking about anti-Semitic incidents, all kinds of incidents, all kinds of disaster. Again, preparedness.
And to your point, CJP's Communal Security Initiative can provide additional resources as well. So we've spoken a lot about Jewish American Heritage Month and the role that that plays and played in the Commission's recommendations. So how does Jewish American Heritage Month fit into municipal implementation?
Yeah, this is a theme that cuts across all of the Commission's work in various areas, and municipalities in particular have a really important role to play in communicating belonging, that Jewish communities, other vulnerable communities are a value part of a civic culture. And one of the ways to do that is through Jewish American Heritage Month. There are other things that municipalities can do, acknowledging the life cycle of the Jewish year. Certainly, this is one that it happens every year in May. It is a national Heritage Month. And in the same way that municipalities, through their various ways, mark and celebrate things like Black History Month or Women's History Month or Pride, this is a moment that they can, through their libraries, through their institutions, through displays in municipal halls, through programming in the schools, and we cover this in K through 12, Jewish American Heritage Month in a municipality can lift up the experiences of Jewish Americans. It can lift up specific contributions that have been made in that municipality, and it can help to bring people together in a broader understanding of civic belonging. That kind of recognition sends a public message that Jewish identity and Jewish participation is a part of your municipality's civic life, and it reinforces the message that combating anti-Semitism is a civic responsibility and not just something that rests on the targeted victim community.
So what's a manageable first step for a municipal leader, for a mayor, or for a resident who wants to move this work forward?
I would say, most importantly, review the various recommendations in the toolkit we provided, make an assessment of where your community is at, and pick one. Figure out one of these things. This is a space where our municipality can make an immediate improvement. Choose one recommendation on which your municipality can make an immediate improvement. Choose someone on your municipal team who will be the accountable owner of executing on that improvement, and set a target date. Show we are going to invest, we're going to make progress in this area. There are other things, of course, you can do, like assessing your relationships as a municipality with Jewish and other vulnerable institutions, reviewing law enforcement training, or identifying and publicizing who specifically at a municipal level handles some of the things we've been discussing, like hate crimes response, bias incidents, or community relations. For residents as well, this is a tool for you. You can, as a resident, again, reviewing some of the key recommendations that we have put on the website and in the toolkit, identify one missing relationship, process, or practice, and then go and do that. That's already a step. Or you can use those tools to identify one specific request you want to take to your municipality and engage them. And there might be something there to bring together not only Jewish, but other faith and civic institutions where appropriate in your community to address something that you've identified. And then when you are engaging with the municipality, ask who will own the response and when the municipality will follow up.
So whether it's about preparing for crisis, securing institutions, or celebrating Jewish cultural identity in your community, JCRC and CJP Center for Combating Antisemitism are here as a resource to you as you work with your municipalities to implement these recommendations.